It was supposed to be just another morning check-in. I brewed my coffee, ran a brush through my shoulder-length hair, threw on a hoodie over my tank top, and clicked, join meeting. Zoom lagged for a second, then loaded faster than I expected. And I heard it. She won't react, she never does, said Matthew's voice, our project manager. That's why we need to move fast. We'll cut her before the next sprint. Just frame it as team optimization, added Hannah. Always smiling. Well, it used to be. I froze. My camera was still off. My mic was muted. They didn't know I was there. They thought it was just them in the room. They were talking about me. Me. She's not a team player. Too quiet. We can't keep dragging her along. And she stands out too much in the repo. She draws attention, but not the good kind. I sat there in silence. Coffee untouched. My fingers wrapped around the mug like a vice. Then slowly, without breathing, I clicked leave meeting. Yes. I'd heard everything. And that was their mistake. My name is Kate Lewis. I'm 30 years old. A senior software engineer at a large tech company in Austin. I'm not a social butterfly, not the glue of the team, not the loud voice in every meeting. I just do my job and do it well. Apparently that was the problem. It's been 3 days since that call. 3 days since I heard Matthew and Hannah plan how to optimize me off the project. They assumed I'd stay quiet. That I'd swallow it, like always. They were wrong. I didn't say a word. Not to HR, not to my manager. I just waited. Listened. Gathered signals. Because if they wanted to play the corporate game, so be it. I'd play too. But on my terms. I had everything I needed, insider knowledge, technical leverage, and patience. Especially patience. And then on day 4 I saw the first move. Team rotation for improved efficiency. I smiled. It had begun. What they didn't know. I'd already archived key logs. I'd studied the access permissions better than DevOps. And I remembered the time Hannah shared NDA-protected documentation with a freelance designer over Slack. They thought I was quiet. I was listening. And I was waiting. I stopped pretending everything was normal on day 5. By that point, it was clear Matthew and Hannah were making moves. Subtle ones, but deliberate. I'd been removed from 2 sprint planning threads, by mistake, according to Matthew. A few of my Jira tickets were reassigned again, just for bandwidth. I said nothing. Just watched. On day 6, I logged into our internal Git Analytics dashboard. It wasn't my responsibility technically, but I knew how to get in. I'd built half the backend reporting logic 2 quarters ago. I pulled the activity logs and filtered by contributor. That's when I saw it. Someone had been making commits under my name, but outside my assigned modules. Tiny tweaks. Unnecessary changes. A few removed comments, altered logic, renamed functions with 0 justification. At first glance, nothing damaging. But together? It painted a pattern. I double-checked the timestamps. Some of them occurred during meetings I was in. I couldn't have made those changes. I clicked through Pulse Rising. The commits were made from a secondary device logged into my credentials. An internal laptop loaner unit. The kind engineers use for travel or for onboarding interns. Someone was ghostwriting code as me. And that someone was sloppy. The internal IP matched a node in our LA office, which just so happened to be where Hannah had been stationed last quarter. I sat back in my chair, fingers curled against my mouse. My mind buzzed with quiet fury. They weren't just trying to remove me, they were manufacturing a reason. Creating noise in my name so when the time came, they could point to inconsistencies. Confusion? Look at all these erratic changes, they'd say. Maybe she's burning out. Maybe it's time to shift her off the repo for now. Corporate framing. Classic. I spent the next hour downloading everything. Commits. Logs. Access history. Even screenshots of Slack threads where Matthew casually referred to me as needing a break. It was subtle, but it was there. The narrative was forming. Lauren, my only real friend on the dev team, called me that evening. I got a weird vibe today, she said. Hannah's been poking around QA, asking about your tests. Because they're setting up a story, I said flatly. She's trying to paint me as unstable. Lauren swore softly. You going to HR? Not yet, I said. They get ahead of it first. And once that narrative's rolling, they'll protect themselves, not me. So what's your move? I hesitated. I'm going to get something better than a complaint. Lauren didn't push. She knew me well enough to hear the weight behind those words. That night, I wrote a script. A small, silent process that would notify me if someone logged into a dev environment under my credentials outside my device ID. It would capture a timestamp, machine fingerprint, and geolocation tag. Not illegal, just observant. By the time I closed my laptop, the tension in my shoulders had coiled into steel. They thought I was soft. They'd soon remember why I got this far in the first place. The notification came at 2:37 a.m. New login detected. User K. Lewis device X193 K location LA branch network. I sat upright in bed, adrenaline snapping me awake. I opened my laptop instantly and connected to the internal repo. Just like I suspected, one of our backend files had been edited, something I hadn't touched in over a month. It was happening again. Only this time I was watching it in real time. The code was subtle, meaningless, just a redundant conditional added, like someone padding a resume. But it was enough to flag suspicion for any senior lead who might glance at version history and think I was slipping. And this time I had it all: timestamp, IP, device ID, and a screen recording of the file being altered while I was logged out. They were done being subtle. And so was I. The next morning I didn't go to HR. I went over their heads. I drafted an email to our CTO. Subject: Security and Credential Misuse Urgent. I attached everything: the logs, screenshots, login alerts, even a comparison of the Git diffs. I wrote plainly, carefully. This activity is occurring under my credentials without my knowledge or authorization. It appears someone is attempting to create a misleading performance pattern under my name. I believe this may be intentional and coordinated. I hit send. And then I waited. By noon, I had a reply. It was short, too short. Received. Reviewing now. Please do not discuss this with anyone else until further notice. The tone was cold, controlled, but something in it made my pulse quicken. At 3:12 p.m., Matthew canceled our weekly team sync. Scheduling conflict, he wrote in Slack. At 4:40 p.m., I noticed Hannah's calendar suddenly blocked out for the rest of the week. At 5:07 p.m., my access to 2 of the internal dashboards was silently restored. And by 5:30 p.m., Lauren texted, "Something's up. People are whispering." Yes, they were. Because the silence wasn't apathy, it was tension. They knew. Not the details, but enough to sense the weather changing. The next morning, Hannah posted a chirpy Slack message in our general channel. Taking a few days offline to reset. We'll be back next week refreshed. Some with face. No one responded. Lauren messaged me privately. She's spiraling. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the office first time in weeks and sat at my desk like nothing happened. But everything had. The power shift wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise. A new kind of silence. And it was mine now. You don't always realize you have it until the silence bends around you. Until people speak more carefully when you enter a room. Until I shift, glances drop, and no one tries to cut you off during a meeting. It was subtle, but I could feel it. The shift. Still, I knew one thing: the truth on paper wasn't enough. Not in tech. Perception mattered just as much as proof. I had to reset the narrative. So I did the one thing I hate most. I scheduled a presentation. I named it neutrally Modular Integrity, Lessons from Q2, and sent the invite to the full dev team. I knew they'd show up. Curiosity, if nothing else, would get them there. Lauren helped me polish the deck. Clean visuals. Audit logs. Get heat maps showing unusual activity around my credentials. All presented like a case study. Impersonal, precise. Not emotional, just undeniable. The morning of the meeting, I dressed sharper than usual. Black blazer. Clean lines. My hair tied back. The kind of look that says, I'm not here to play. At 10:01 a.m., the Zoom filled. 23 faces, including Matthew, his expression unreadable. Hannah's square was still dark. And then right as I was about to start, a new name joined the call. Elliot Voss, CTO. A few faces shifted. Even Matthew's eyebrows twitched. I didn't flinch. Just clicked, share screen, and began. I walked them through the architecture methodically, clearly. Showed how a certain backend module had been optimized, then reversed, then touched again, none of which was assigned to me. I explained the log discrepancies. The credential trail. No accusations. Just the data. By slide 9, the chat had gone silent. By slide 12, Lauren messaged me privately. They're stunned. And by the end, I finished with a quiet, questions. There were none. Until Elliot unmuted. Thanks, Kate, he said evenly. I'd like a copy of that deck. We'll be reviewing this further. In the meantime, your dashboard access has been fully restored, and I've reassigned your original modules back to you. Expect a formal update soon. Click. Mute. I ended the call, sat back, and exhaled. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. Respect isn't loud. It's not applause or congratulations. It's what happens when people stop talking over you. When their "just a second" turn into "go ahead." When the inbox gets quieter but the replies sharper. The week after my presentation, everything changed. People watched me now. Not with suspicion but with wariness. Like I'd shifted into some new category of person they couldn't quite define. One part threat, one part mystery. I wasn't trying to be intimidating. I was just working. But power, once visible, doesn't go unnoticed. And I hadn't forgotten that Hannah hadn't officially fallen. Her Slack status remained offline for a reset. But her access logs were still active barely. Quiet pings in old spaces. A stale test branch that hadn't been touched a month suddenly showed new entries. I stared at the commit history. It was strange. The messages vague. Minor fix. Cleanup. Stability tweak. But there was one file that caught my eye, an internal integration script for an API endpoint we'd deprecated a year ago. Why revive it? I cloned the branch locally and ran the script in Sandbox. My system flagged an immediate warning: external calls to a legacy third-party form handler. One not on our approved vendor list. That wasn't just sloppy. It was dangerous. I called Lauren. Check your inbox, I said. Tell me I'm not paranoid. She opened the files. A pause. Then that script sends client-side data to an unverified endpoint. Yup. And it's running under our certs? Yup. She exhaled sharply. This isn't just sabotage. This could be a security breach. Exactly. I documented everything again. I wasn't about to be accused of crying wolf. Then I did something bolder. I pushed an alert through our internal security ticketing system, marked urgent. I CC'd Elliot. The response was immediate. Within an hour, Hannah's account was fully locked. By evening, a company-wide notice went out. We've identified a deprecated integration that has been disabled. No user data was exposed. Audit ongoing. Polished. Diplomatic. But I could read between the lines. Lauren messaged me late that night. Was that her final card? I replied, if it was weak. But part of me knew it wasn't just weakness. It was desperation. And desperation leaves trails. I didn't expect the meeting invite. It came late on a Thursday afternoon from Marcus Lane, our director of security. Subject line: private discussion, confidential. The calendar showed 30 minutes, no agenda. Lauren raised her eyebrows when I told her. That's either really good or really bad. I smiled. Let's find out. Marcus wasn't someone I interacted with often. He was high-level, minimal small talk, always moving like he had a dozen fires burning. When I joined the call, he was already there, camera on, neutral expression. Kate, he said with a nod. Thanks for joining. No problem. I'll be direct, he began. What you flagged this week, it wasn't the first incident. I sat still. He continued, we've been monitoring unusual credential behavior for months. But without context, without someone close to the activity, it was hard to prove. And now? He gave a small smile. Now we have something traceable. Thanks to you. I exhaled. We're not making this public, he added. Not yet. Legal is involved. There may be implications beyond company policy. I nodded slowly. And Hannah? He didn't answer directly. She's been advised to retain counsel. My stomach turned not with fear but something else. A strange blend of vindication and weariness. This goes beyond my initial report, I said carefully. I wasn't trying to build a case. Just protect my name. And you did, he replied. Elegantly. He leaned forward. But now you have a choice. This could remain quiet. Resolved internally. Or you could speak. I blinked. Speak, publicly? Internally for now. But down the line, your version of events might matter more than you think. People will want to know how this happened. How someone like her operated unchecked. I didn't answer right away. He didn't push. After the call ended, I sat in silence. Not with panic. Not even with anger. Just the weight of what came next, /. I didn't want to speak. I wanted to write code. Build things. Keep my head down and stay out of the drama. That had always been my armor, quiet excellence. But some battles find you anyway. After the call with Marcus, I slept on it. Thought long and hard about what it meant to speak. About the difference between exposing someone and explaining yourself. By Monday, I knew what I had to do. I requested a 10-minute slot during our next all-hands. Just 10 minutes. Not a tell-all. Just a reset. Elliot approved it without hesitation. When the day came, I stood in front of a small camera in a quiet conference room and looked into a sea of faces, some curious, some supportive, some unreadable. I'm not here to name names, I began. I'm here to address something that many of you sensed, but no one wanted to say out loud. I kept it high level. I spoke about accountability, about how systems fail not because no one sees the problem, but because people assume someone else will fix it. I talked about the importance of code integrity, access boundaries, and personal ethics, even when no one's watching. I ended with a line I hadn't rehearsed. I stayed quiet because I thought silence was strength. But strength is knowing when to speak. And I'm speaking now not for revenge, but for clarity. There was silence afterward. Then applause. Later that day, I got a string of DMs. People I barely knew saying thank you. That they'd felt something was off. That they respected me for handling it with grace. It was the first time I didn't feel alone in the room. But not all the messages were supportive. One anonymous comment, left on an internal forum, read simply, "Funny how fast you became the hero." Some of us remember who stayed silent before it mattered. I stared at it for a long time. Because it was true. I had stayed silent. But I wasn't anymore. And if someone out there was still watching, I hoped they were paying close attention. Things didn't go back to normal. They evolved. 2 weeks after the all-hands, I was invited to join a confidential task force, one focused on building internal integrity tools, smarter credential alerts, access flags, anomaly detection. It felt surreal, like walking through a door I didn't even know existed. And this time, I walked in with my head high. My voice carried weight now. Not just because of what I'd done, but because of how I'd done it. Quietly. Precisely. Without fire, just focus. But that anonymous comment lingered. Some of us remember who stayed silent. It echoed in my head on quiet nights, especially when I scrolled back through old Slack threads and emails, looking for something. I wasn't sure what. Maybe closure. Maybe answers. That's when I saw it. An old pull request, minor changes, nothing meaningful, but logged as reviewed and approved by someone who had never worked on our team. Name, R. Sandler. It shouldn't have meant anything. Our company had thousands of employees. Sometimes people got pulled into temp reviews for compliance reasons. But this PR was internal. Sensitive. And from the timestamp, it aligned with the same week my credentials were being used without authorization. I checked the logs. R. Sandler had credentials that touch multiple projects, but always just once. One login. One review. Then gone. A ghost. I asked Marcus about it casually. He froze. Then, leave that one alone, Kate. I raised an eyebrow. Why? He hesitated. Because that's not part of your story anymore. And just like that I knew. There was more. Layers I hadn't seen. Players I hadn't known existed. But I'd learned something over the last month. Power is knowing what not to chase. So I nodded. Backed off. For now. A month later, the office looked the same, but I didn't feel the same walking through it. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't coasting. I was present. Intentional. There were no banners. No promotions. No whispers of reward. But something had shifted in the hallways, in the meetings, in the way people introduced me to new hires. This is Kate. She's who you want on your side. That sentence meant more to me than any title ever could. When Elliot asked if I'd run a monthly session for junior devs on integrity and engineering, I hesitated. I wasn't a teacher. I didn't love public speaking. But I said yes. Because maybe silence wasn't my shield anymore. Maybe now my voice could be something else. The first session was quiet. 5 young developers, wide-eyed and awkward. I didn't give them rules. I gave them a story. Not about betrayal, but about attention. Listening. And choosing the moment to act. One of them, Amira, asked me, "Do you think people get away with things just because others stay quiet?" I smiled. They used to. Less so now. She nodded and I saw something spark behind her eyes. That night, I went home feeling lighter than I had in months. Until I checked my mail. In the pile of coupons and bills, there was a small envelope. No return address. Inside, a single slip of paper. Typed. Silence used to protect you. Now it just isolates you. No name. No clue. But the phrasing. I'd heard it once before. Two people in this company had said something similar in private chats, and only one of them still worked here. I stared at the note, heart calm. Not afraid. Just ready.